Well, I have 2:02 at the time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Would like to welcome everyone today for this co-branded. We are very excited to have this co-branded webinar today with Green Electronics Council. They are a strategic partner of NASPO, along with Valuepoint. We're very happy to have Voight from NASPO Valuepoint joining us today, as well as Andy from the state of Minnesota. We're going to talk about how NASPO Valuepoint utilizes EPEAT in their IT portfolios to create value add for stakeholders. I am Kevin Miner. I'm a media production project manager, but I am also staff lead for green purchasing with NASPO. So I just quickly wanted to walk you guys through, if you need more resources or information on green purchasing, we offer quite a bit. If you go to naspo.org, up here in the corner, you'll see this URL, and you go to our Research and Innovation tab, and you hit Green Purchasing Resources, and it'll take you to this page, where you'll have access to our Green Purchasing Guide. This is an online resource for our members, purchasing agents, but also for other agencies to have a basic understanding of the concept of a green purchasing program, and it goes all the way to very complex and high-level implementing of a green program. We also have green purchasing webinar series, which this is a part of, and that is housed on YouTube. So if you go and you click on this link here, it will take you to all of our previously recorded green purchasing webinars. We also have this interactive map, and that is our states with green purchasing programs or activities. We're actually working on updating that right now, but it's interactive, so you can go to any of these green states here, click on one, and it will show you what kind of green initiatives and EPP that state is working with. So if you have any questions or comments, concerns of some of the resources that we at NASPO offer for green purchasing, you can email myself at kminer@naspo.org, and I am happy to point you in the right direction or answer your questions. So with that being said, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Jonathan Rifkin.
All right. How am I looking there, Kevin?
Looks great.
You can see you're getting the main event?
Yep.
All right.
In-person view looks good.
Thank you very much. First off, let me introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Rifkin. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships for the Green Electronics Council, and it's a real pleasure to be here co-hosting with NASPO and NASPO Valuepoint because GEC considers these organizations core strategic partners. We see the influence that a cooperative as large as NASPO Valuepoint can exert on the marketplace, and I really hope that this webinar is going to demonstrate that great things happen when purchasers like NASPO Valuepoint and states recognize that power and they use it to promote sustainability. So excited to get started here. First, I'm going to just kind of talk you through GEC and EPEAT because that is kind of a core element of all of our presentations. So first, let me talk a little bit about the Green Electronics Council. The Green Electronics Council is a mission-driven nonprofit. We were founded in 2006, and since our inception, we've been pursuing a world in which only sustainable IT products are designed, are manufactured, and are purchased. We try to meet that vision every day by providing free and publicly available resources to our primary stakeholder, who is, of course, the large purchaser, groups like NASPO Valuepoint, groups like the states. And our hope is that those resources will help each of them along their sustainable procurement journey and so that they can be successful in their endeavors. Perhaps the most popular of our programs is our flagship program, EPEAT. EPEAT is the leading Type 1 ecolabel for sustainable IT products globally, and something that we will definitely talk about in the approaching slides. But before I get into a little bit about EPEAT, just one way to think about GEC, in addition to being the organization that oversees EPEAT, is really as the organization that sits between those who buy and those who make sustainable IT products. And we use that role as a convener who has strong and long relationships with both of those stakeholders to serve as a platform where some of the most pressing issues facing the sustainable IT space can be addressed. And that's a lot of what we do every day. But as I said, we're going to talk a little bit about EPEAT, just give you a feel for what it is that has been embedded into these NASPO Valuepoint contracts. And our scope covers PCs and displays, and this is one of the things that we're going to talk about a great deal, one of the main commodities focused on today, which is, your desktops, your displays, your notebooks, your laptops, imaging equipment in an office sense, such as copiers, MFDs, printers, and scanners. And we also have active product categories for televisions, for mobile phones, and for servers. Later this year, we're going to be launching a new product category and registry for photovoltaics and inverters, which is the solar panels, for those who might not be familiar with that particular term. And in next year, we intend to launch a product category for network infrastructure, which is the routers and the switches that make up a network and ultimately allow services like the cloud to exist. So we're really excited about that as well. So for all those purchasers out there, if you ever buy any of these commodities, please think of us, because if you specify it against EPEAT, you're going to pursue sustainable leadership in the process. So this slide right here is a list of all of the brands that currently participate in the EPEAT program. This is one of the reasons that we have been as successful as we have been. To be able to have so many familiar brands is essential to the success of an ecolabel. And if you had really good eyes, and if I gave you a minute or two, I assure you you'd be able to find a few brands that you probably are already buying or certainly know. So anyway, one aspect of our program that we're really excited about and proud of, our relationships with the brands. I'd like to also just talk a little bit about how our criteria is developed. In a purchasing world, the specification is the heart and soul of the procurement. And in the ecolabel world, the criteria is the heart and soul of the ecolabel. And so we put a lot of thought and effort into how we go about developing our criteria. We do so through a balanced, voluntary, consensus-based process that covers the full life cycle of the product. So let me break that down for you. When I say the full life cycle of the product, there are labels out there that may address one phase, such as use or energy efficiency. Whereas for EPEAT, we're covering the entire life of that product, ranging from material extraction and use to the manufacturing process and design, end-of-life disposal to make sure it's done in a responsible way. And we even have criteria that addresses things like corporate social responsibility. So it really covers the full gambit of any aspect of sustainability tied to a product. We develop criteria against those various phases through the balanced, voluntary, consensus-based process. And once again, just let me break that down for you. What that means is that the criteria is developed through an open, a balanced, an inclusive and transparent process, meaning that all the players who need to be at the table are at the table, your manufacturers, your purchasers, your environmental advocates, and they're all developing criteria under a process that ensures that no one voice is going to be able to dominate the conversation. And so what that does is it instills credibility into the process. So when you combine that with the full product lifecycle, you really get a very credible and useful ecolabel such as EPEAT. A little bit more about criteria and our rating system. We have two types of criteria. One is required and the other is optional. Simply by being on the EPEAT registry, you are a leadership product. And that's because you need to be meeting all of that required criteria. Now, manufacturers can create and purchasers can buy products that meet rising tiers of leadership, bronze, silver, and gold. And they do that by meeting more optional criteria. So if you're bronze, it means you're hitting all those required criteria, but you're also hitting at least 50% of the optional criteria. For silver, same deal, all the required, somewhere in between 50 and 75% of optional. And for gold, 75% of all the required plus more than 75% optional. So this is great because it gives purchasers the ability to choose the right level of leadership for their particular organization. But really what's most important is what that criteria addresses. And in this case, we have a list of the areas that are most important because our goal is ultimately to move the dial. And so the criteria that we've discussed, it addresses things like climate change, chemicals, and human health, which is really, really important, resource consumption, end of life, and how do you dispose of your product responsibly, and social responsibility as well. So that's, I think, important to remember because that's what's really important here. And then just lastly for this part, because I will be revisiting with you all toward the end of this presentation after my colleagues present, is just wanted to share some of those free and publicly available resources that we provide. We want everyone to be successful. Tools like this allow groups like NASPO Valuepoint in Minnesota to be successful. And you can do so by using things like policy examples to help guide your direction, contract language that you can use as a template to tweak and make a part of your solicitations. And also, we have other great tools such as the EPEAT benefits calculator, which we will talk about a little later in this presentation. Highly valuable in projecting success and demonstrating progress. So with that, I'm going to give this presentation back over to Kevin, who will let Voight take over.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
And while Voight's getting set up, I will like to remind everybody that we do have a question and answer box down at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them there or type them in the chat box, and we will address them towards the end. With that being said, I will introduce Voight Sheely. Voight.
Hey, Kevin, are you seeing my screen?
I sure do, Voight. Looks great.
Fabulous. Hello, everyone. My name is Voight Sheely. I'm a NASPO Valuepoint Cooperative Contract Coordinator. I've been with NASPO Valuepoint for almost 5 years. I am the former Chief Procurement Officer for the state of South Carolina, where I served in that capacity for 20 years. One second. You can't understand NASPO Valuepoint fully without starting with a foundation of knowledge regarding our national association, NASPO, the National Association of State Procurement Officials. NASPO was established in 1941 as a nonprofit association with a focus on education, research, and communication. The membership is the chief procurement officers for all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. territories. NASPO members, the CPOs of all 50 states and the District of Columbia, created the NASPO Procurement Cooperative through the execution of a Memorandum of Agreement. NASPO Valuepoint is NASPO's cooperative purchasing program that facilitates multi-state public procurement solicitations and agreements using what we call a lead state model. I'll touch on that a little bit more later. The MOA simply creates a framework for multi-state collaboration. States working together on common solicitations rather than each duplicating efforts soliciting their own contracts. Simple. We're the only procurement cooperative with all 50 states and the District of Columbia as signatory members. NASPO Valuepoint contracts are available to all state and local agencies, public school districts, and public colleges and universities. In some states, they're available to nonprofit entities. And simply put, if you're eligible to buy from your state's contracts, you're eligible to buy from NASPO Valuepoint contracts. We've been around a while. Our name has changed a little bit, but for 26 years, we've been providing state and local governments best value contracts. Going to NASPO's Green Purchasing Policy, as adopted on January 22nd of 2009, the NASPO Green Purchasing Policy seeks to leverage the purchasing power of state and local government to conserve energy, and national resources, limit environmental pollution and waste, improve public health, encourage clean technologies, and create cost savings opportunities and a balanced economy. We hope that you will visit this website that I've given you a link to. There's far more information there, including tools, guidance, resources, and implementation strategies. NASPO Valuepoint is NASPO's vehicle for leveraging that purchasing power of state and local governments. NASPO members, the state CPOs, they're all covered by the respective state statutes, executive orders, and procurement policies. In my case in South Carolina, it was in part statutory, but in large part a procurement policy that I and the other chief procurement officers engaged. NASPO's mission is to help our members achieve success as procurement leaders in their states. This, being NASPO Valuepoint, is a way to allow our state CPOs to do just that, to be leaders in their states. All NASPO Valuepoint contracts are solicited and awarded by our members, the state CPOs. The state's Valuepoint solicitations, therefore, emphasize their sustainable procurement programs. Imagine the power. Imagine all 50 states working together on a single common solicitation for the products and services they need. Everybody working as one instead of duplicating redundant effort. NASPO Valuepoint is the highest volume public procurement cooperative in the nation. Purchasing volume from NASPO Valuepoint contracts has exceeded $12 billion each of the last 2 years. Markets are moved by this leverage, by this volume. We leverage market evolution. Our process. We are a true cooperative. State chief procurement officers suggest ideas for new cooperative contracts. A board of 31 state CPOs vet each suggestion and approve the upcoming solicitations. When that happens, one of the states volunteers to lead that solicitation, to do the solicitation and make the awards. Other states assist the lead state with ideas to develop and improve the solicitation, their own state-specific terms and conditions to be included in that lead state solicitation. Solicitation support by our sourcing team members, including procurement officers and subject matter experts who work with the lead state in building that solicitation, evaluating the proposals, determining the awards, and administering the contracts. It's not a one and done issue. They live with that lead state and those contractors for the life of the contracts. Once board approval is received, the lead state actually awards the contract. NASPO Valuepoint awards no contracts. Our states do. State and local government participate in NASPO Valuepoint contracts by signing participating addendums, what we call PAs, with the suppliers, the bilateral agreements that you sign with the suppliers. In those PAs, you're welcome to add your own unique terms and conditions, including your sustainable purchasing policies, and to customize the use of the contract between you and the supplier. NASPO Valuepoint includes EPEAT requirements in the solicitations where they exist. For years, we've included EPEAT requirements in computers and copiers. Brand new, with new EPEAT criteria for wireless communication, wireless devices. The state of Utah included in a brand new solicitation for wireless data, voice, and accessories, evaluation criteria used to judge and grade each one of the offerers in their proposals. Now, Utah chose not to require EPEAT graded products only. They chose instead, and I'm going to quote Christopher Jennings, Assistant Director of the State of Utah Division of Purchasing. He said, "We did not make environmental requirements mandatory in the RFP to make it inclusive as possible. We did, however, make EPEAT requirements scoreable criteria so it would be part of the solicitation." Now, as a user, how do you leverage your participation in NASPO Valuepoint contracts to buy environmentally sustainable products? Several ways. Once Valuepoint contracts are awarded, state and local governments exercise their rights to participate by signing those PAs. In doing so, you choose the suppliers that you use. You also choose the products you buy. So if you can choose between a supplier who you believe is environmentally conscious versus one that's not. When you actually select the products that you buy, you can select the EPEAT graded products over the others. That's your choice. You have great power as a purchaser using our contracts. Our suppliers submit quarterly reports to us of their sales activities. For these categories, and in the future, hopefully other categories where they're EPEAT standards, they include that information in their quarterly reports. That's our availability of data to build these reports. Results. I'm going to focus on one thing. Just in 2018, state and local governments purchasing EPEAT products from NASPO Valuepoint contracts saved $20.7 million for our efforts. We're proud that EPEAT has recognized us as awardee for our purchasing activities in 2018 and 2019. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Voight. That was really wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing all that information with us, Voight. And so now I will introduce to you Andy. He should be pulling his screen up here.
Let's see, Kevin, would you be able to transfer control over to me? It seems to, oh, there we go. Actually, apologies.
No problem.
Things went a little weird on me there for a moment. Gotta love the technical issues. It's not a presentation without them. All right. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Andy Dorn, and I am the IT Acquisition Supervisor here at the State of Minnesota's Office of State Procurement. We're the central procurement arm for the state of Minnesota. So among other responsibilities, this means that we establish and manage enterprise-level contracts for our state agencies and other political subdivisions to use. One part of our charge is to make sure that we are engaging in sustainable practices in multiple different areas. Setting up agreements that are of best value to the state, encouraging small and diverse business participation, keeping an eye on the long-term viability of our contracts, and, of course, environmental sustainability. Our office leads the NASPO Valuepoint computer equipment and hardware contract portfolio. We serve as the lead state for that and for a few other NASPO Valuepoint portfolios. So what does that mean? At a very high level, a lead state is just that, the lead member of a sourcing team. They tackle the bulk of the work and the management of the process. The rest of the sourcing team is comprised of members of other states, usually from their central procurement offices as well, but in some cases, subject matter experts will also serve on the sourcing team to make sure that we're getting that perspective in the solicitation. As Voight discussed earlier, the solicitation is done in accordance with the lead state's policies and procedures, but will be designed in a way to maximize the ability of other states to participate. This includes working in provisions for the NASPO Valuepoint contract needs, such as the reporting that Voigt discussed in his slides, and taking into consideration requirements that other states may have for the evaluation and advertising process. As a lead state, participating entities frequently ask us questions regarding how the NASPO Valuepoint portfolios we lead were solicited. And that's to make sure that it was done in compliance with their jurisdiction's policies and procedures. Because when an auditor comes asking them if things are all squared away, they need to be able to say yes with confidence. And we do what we can to balance the viability of the solicitation with maximizing the ability of other public entities to participate. For those of you that have been paying attention, this slide is going to look very familiar since Voigt used it earlier. For those that haven't been paying attention, welcome to seeing this slide for the first time. I'm sharing this slide again because I would like to add a little more color to the solicitation process from the lead state perspective. The lead state and sourcing team draft the requirements of the solicitation. This involves a number of different things for different contract portfolios, but for the computer equipment portfolio, the sourcing team has been engaged in a comprehensive review of how the prior solicitation was done, what worked well, what hasn't, and how we might improve things this time around. Because of course, as we're going through the solicitation process, we think we know how a particular element is going to play into a contract, but we don't really know until the contracts occur. And in the computer equipment portfolio, luckily we have the live contracts that we're working with now to see how particular provisions have turned out. A critical element of our discussions is how any changes we may want to make might affect the ability of other states to participate. Different states have different statutory requirements around advertising, evaluation, and other elements of the solicitation process. We don't want to make a change feeling like it's going to improve the overall portfolio, but in doing so, remove the ability of some states to participate. So we rely on our sourcing teams to provide the perspective of their own states, and also give us some thoughts and feedback about what changes might mean for states that aren't represented directly on the sourcing team. The sourcing team then works with the NASPO Valuepoint board to get final approval and release the RFP to the vendor community. When responses come back in, the evaluation is performed by the lead state and the sourcing team. In the case of the Minnesota computer equipment portfolio, Minnesota performs the objective analysis, calculating price and figuring out the other hard variables, such as compliance with Minnesota laws and regulations. The sourcing team evaluates the subjective criteria and serves as the evaluation team. Ideally, once the evaluation is complete, the proposed master agreement or agreements are negotiated by the sourcing team, approved by the NASPO Valuepoint board, and made available to NASPO Valuepoint members to begin the negotiation of their participating addenda, or PA is the participating addenda. To help facilitate the negotiation of PAs, a sample participating addendum is provided for each master agreement holder that incorporates in the relevant master agreement terms and attempts to leave space for states to add in their own statutes and other needed language. The participating entities are encouraged to hew as close to the sample PA as possible, because one of the benefits of NASPO Valuepoint to the states and vendors alike is the reduced time to contract that can result when joint terms are leveraged. One of the things we think about to ease that path on the computer equipment contract is how the master agreement plays into the participating addendum. In the order of precedence, the participating addendum comes higher than the master agreement, allowing the participating entity's specific statutory or other needs to be at the highest level and allow for more participation. Because of that, there are many things at the master agreement level that can be optional, so to speak, for the participating entities. With that being the case, how does sustainability actually play into the master agreements, and what can we do to encourage sustainability at the master agreement level? By making sustainability-related provisions mandatory, but setting them up to be opt-out provisions. Voight discussed earlier that Utah went the way of not requiring some of the particular environmental requirements. And just based on different portfolios, different things might make sense. Anyone who's involved in procurement will tell you that no two commodity areas are the same as far as how to approach them. For computer equipment, we do think that it's computer equipment and hardware. We do think that it's a viable option to pursue it more from that opt-out approach, where we make things mandatory, but then give states the ability to opt out of them in their own states if that's not important to them. One of the reasons that we can do this, and a part of how we get some of our subject matter expertise, is because in Minnesota, we're fortunate to have an agency called the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency that has state sustainability efforts as a part of their purview. As a public procurement professional, I appreciate having them around because I'm really called on to be a jack of all trades. So having them as subject matter experts is invaluable to us. There are some members of the agency that we work closely with as subject matter experts to provide us with guidance and assistance in that area. They also help us connect with the Green Electronics Council and make sure we are doing things in an effective, future-facing way. Earlier in the presentation, Jonathan shared some of the resources that are available to assist in sustainable procurements. So working with these groups, working with our sourcing team, the Pollution Control Agency, and others, we state in the computer equipment RFP that for any product in a category where there is an EPEAT standard that exists, products that are in those categories must meet the EPEAT bronze at a minimum. So I just want to emphasize that for us, it's really simple. In 3 short paragraphs in the solicitation and contract, we can move the needle on sustainability. The first is that we ask the responder agree to maintain EPEAT bronze in the applicable product categories, and it's mandatory that they do this. States are allowed to provide a waiver at their level for the participating agreements, but at the master level, they must agree. Second, the responder describes their commitment to Energy Star for categories where there are not EPEAT standards. So even in areas where EPEAT hasn't had an opportunity to set standards, or that it's not viable to set a standard, we're still getting some sustainability efforts in there. And third, the responder describes how they are pursuing environmental improvements outside of those programs. So the EPEAT and the Energy Star areas are mandatory. And then we ask for some descriptions that will give us the ability to score responses. Even if something isn't mandatory, we do get the chance to give them more points for better sustainability efforts. So an awful lot of the work for getting that language into the contract has been done for us. That's a big part of why we use EPEAT. They use independent verification, have online registry, and are internationally recognized as a leader in the IT sector. All we have to do is get some basic language in our contract, and a lot of the legwork is handled for us. Now, I have to say, we understand that not every state is going to have a pollution control agency the way that we do, and they may not have legislative or gubernatorial support for sustainability efforts. So that's why we built in that opt-out provision. Our master agreements include explicit language stating that states and participating entities can opt out if they choose. But if the states do not explicitly give vendors a waiver to opt out of EPEAT, then they're at least getting bronze in those categories. So this means that some states that might not have otherwise pursued sustainability on their own end up getting some additional benefit in that area. And even if some states do opt to take the waiver, just having those requirements in place emphasizes to the vendor community the importance of building sustainability into their products. Now, all that being said, I do want to make sure I call out that the fact that it's not all 100% rosy. We have heard from some vendors, particularly newer or smaller players, that independent certification programs can be challenging for them. The costs involved can be too high for them, just as small companies, or in some cases, the pace of technological innovation is moving so quickly that a review process to get a certification might take just long enough so that the product in question is obsolete by the time they get certified. And that is a serious concern. Sustainability at a high level also includes the idea of making sure we are allowing small businesses access to state dollars. But there are concerns that I know the Green Electronics Council takes seriously, as they have engaged in that area to provide better paths for small businesses to achieve certification. All right, so now that you've heard a little bit about the lead state experience, I want to hand it back to Kevin and Jonathan to bring it home.
Wow, Andy, thank you so much. Just so thorough, and it's really great to see, you know, just how much work the states put in, and not just that, but how much we all get back. So, and again, I could go on about it all day, but that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Andy. Jonathan, I think you had some more if you would like to pick up where you left off, sir.
Hello?
Hey, Jonathan, can you hear us? I think you're muted. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah, got you.
Perfect. Can you hear me? And you're seeing the full slide?
Yep, we can see everything. You're loud and clear.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So first off, you know, listening to Andy talk, I couldn't help just getting excited, because I really love hearing you talk about a few things, but one in particular, the ease of the process for using EPEAT, because that, to me, it embodies the true value of the ecolabel. As you said, a lot of the legwork is completed for you on the front end. There's a lot of environmental knowledge that needs to be applied, which maybe isn't in the wheelhouse or is the strongest suit for the purchaser. And because that type of thinking is done through the ecolabel, the purchaser can focus on what they do best, which is, of course, purchasing. Anyway, I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't emphasize that particular point, Andy, so thank you for making it. So now I'm going to conclude by just talking a little bit about the value that GEC and its EPEAT benefits calculator provides its stakeholders. To demonstrate this, I'm once again revisiting a slide from Voight. So once again, this slide should look familiar. Sorry, Voight, we're just cribbing some of your best stuff there. And the reason why I am trying to emphasize this particular slide is because it's just true that if you can't track progress, if you can't demonstrate positive benefits to your stakeholders that result from making these more sustainable decisions, then you're leaving a lot of value on the table for your organization. The slide that we're looking at right now, it outlines these benefits. These are amazing numbers. I mean, when you understand the size of the contract, you begin to understand that the impacts are very, very, very real. But also, if not for the calculator, not only would we not be able to see these amazing numbers, but in truth, because we weren't getting the word out there, because we weren't sharing the fact that this type of progress is being made, we very well may never even had this webinar and been able to get it out there. So I think that highlights the value of tools like the EPEAT benefits calculator. But even beyond that, there are a lot of other reasons or ways in which a calculation tool can add value. For one thing, if you're an organization that has not yet pursued EPEAT, but is considering doing so, you can use the calculator, which is available online, and you can plug and chug. It's very simple to use. You can hypothesize on the likely benefits that your organization would enjoy if you were to include EPEAT. And in doing so, you're establishing a strong business case, and you're helping to build enthusiasm amongst your stakeholders, even those who might not have initially been familiar with EPEAT, about why this might be a good idea. The calculator is also valuable because, I hate to say it, but organizations are increasingly required to report on sustainable metrics. Things like GHG emission reduction or waste reduction are coming just standard operating procedure. And by having access to a calculator such as this, when that inevitable email arrives in your inbox or the boss comes knocking on the door asking for this type of information, you're going to be able to provide it. It's really, really important and just a fact of life these days. And then lastly, and most importantly, I think, is you can talk to all of your stakeholders using the calculator because we offer equivalencies. And these equivalencies allow you to talk about sustainable benefit in terms that everyone understands. And you can see that we have a few of them already up on this particular slide. So instead of metric tons of GHG reduction, you're talking about how many cars you took off the road in a year. And all of a sudden, you're providing clarity to people that helps them to understand the wisdom of using EPEAT in your contract. So I revisit this slide because I feel it is so important to be able to promote and message these efforts and recognize groups like NASPO Valuepoint in Minnesota for the work that they're doing so that others can emulate that. And the EPEAT calculator is a really essential tool to help you accomplish that. So just last, this is my last slide. I'm drilling down on this particular point a little bit further. Thanks to the way NASPO Valuepoint collects their data, we're able to take the high level spend that you were looking at just a moment ago, and we can isolate that spend by state. And what that does is it results in benefits calculations on a customized individual level. GEC's already completed state-specific calculations for all states that are purchased off of NASPO Valuepoint contracts for the 2018 year, but I did extract just a few examples for your review. So first off, take a look at Arizona. A state like Arizona could and should talk about their energy savings and their cost savings, but maybe a state like Arizona would also want to highlight their efforts to preserve water as a resource. Considering their geography, considering they're in the middle of a desert, it's probably a priority to them, and the calculator allows you to extract that through the water pollution avoidance metric that the calculator produces. You can demonstrate metrics such as avoided hazardous waste produced. Once again, speaking to, I think, something that everybody can get behind, which is protection of human health. And once again, the calculator allows you to highlight that. And then in a state like Alaska, you could choose to highlight GHG reduction. This is important, I think, generally, but maybe something that Alaska in particular would want to highlight because climate change can impact them and based on their location on the globe a little bit more than it might other regions. And so clearly, I think when you take a look at the high level spend data that it provides, you take a look at how you're able to drill down into unique applications of that data, you can conclude that NASPO Valuepoint's decision to include EPEAT in its contract and the state of Minnesota's decision resulted in really great benefit to their individual stakeholders. And from a GEC's perspective, we really thank them for the opportunity to have been able to help make such a big difference across the states. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I think give it back to Kevin, and we can open things up to questions, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. It does look like we have several questions here. I'm going to pull those up. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, we've got several in the chat box here, but we also have a question and answer box. So Jonathan, this is from Christine Warnock.
Mm-hmm.
Does the social responsibility criteria considered for EPEAT rating include things like sweat-free workplace practices and supporting workers' rights to effectively address workplace violence? Where we seek to contract with firms that can demonstrate or clarify that their employees are not required as a condition of employment to agreed mandatory individual requirements for class collective action waivers. That's a long one. Can you see that over there in the chat box?
No problem at all. Hello, Christine, and thank you for that. We got a little jargony towards the end of that, but at a high level, we do address social responsibility, but not necessarily specifically sweatshop free labor. We address things like complex minerals. We address worker health and safety. And we also, I think this is important because it kind of opens the door to the types of things that Christine is talking about, is transparency into the supply chain. And so there is criteria that addresses those types of things specifically and do lead to a more social, an important facet to the EPEAT criteria. So the answer is yes, we do address social because it's just so important, you need to. But I can't speak specifically to sweat-free labor and things of that nature.
All right. Pull up. I know I had more questions. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Another one for you, Jonathan. Is it possible to use EPEAT bronze certification in Europe, in European Union, to proven IT products such as PCs, laptops, monitors, and compliance with all of the Energy Star criteria?
I love it. We got an EU question. Thank you for tuning in. So the short answer to that question is yes. Energy Star is a required criteria through EPEAT, but without getting into too much detail with the rest of the organization, with the rest of the participants, there's some complexity that surrounds that in terms of EU requirements. But use of EPEAT does in fact address energy efficiency, and so you could use EPEAT. There's probably more conversation that we could have to work through the kinks of that and wrinkle out the answer there. But what I would love to do is, for the sake of everybody else, please get in contact with me, and we can talk about exactly how you go about doing that and any documentation that might be necessary to ensure that you would get credit for use of EPEAT.
Awesome. There is a second part to that question, Jonathan.
Oh.
And that is it possible, is it right to ask at least for EPEAT bronze certification to verify that the product meets Energy Star criteria?
That becomes, I wish I had my lawyer present. It becomes a legal question. There's a lot of regulation involved in how to answer that, which has to do with the EU. My focus is, I'm aware of the issues talking about. My focus happens to be in the state and public sector. And so but we have people on staff who could speak to that directly and have answers for her. So perhaps we can take this offline.
Okay. And again, you can also email me at kminer@naspo.org. And I can get you connected with Jonathan and with Voight and everybody else here today, and can continue asking your questions. So let's see here. We have one from Julia Wolf. She says, reporting has been mentioned. Can NASPO Valuepoint or Minnesota provide a participating state info on numbers of EPEAT purchased equipment by their states? So I'll direct that at Andy or Voight.
Hey, this is Voight Cheeley. We can, to a degree, keep in mind these reports are voluminous. They are huge spreadsheets. The information is reported in a certain format, and most of the suppliers follow that format, but not to a T. So generally speaking, the answer is yes. It may take us a little bit of time to gather that information and sort it down in that fashion if you were to ask for information for your state.
And I can add to that and say that yes, that analysis has been done for 2018 data, and if you were interested in receiving it, we'd be happy to provide it for the state of Massachusetts or really any state that was interested in knowing.
Excellent. And Voight, during the presentation, you talked about participating entities. Can entities other than state governments purchase off of NASPO Valuepoint contracts?
They can. I believe I mentioned in the presentation. Simply put, if you are an entity eligible to purchase from your state's contracts, then you're eligible to purchase from the NASPO Valuepoint contracts. So we don't establish the rules in each and every state. Our members, or the chief procurement officers in those states, they are subject to state procurement laws that they must comply with. So under those laws, in any state, if you're eligible to purchase from that state's contracts, then you're eligible to purchase from NASPO Valuepoint contracts. Now, the chief procurement officers, our members, they do evaluate NASPO Valuepoint contracts. Every state participates in some NASPO Valuepoint contracts. No state participates in all. They're vetted in each and every state, and each state chief procurement officer determines which NASPO Valuepoint contracts and which NASPO Valuepoint suppliers your state uses. I can walk anyone through that later on if you'd like to contact me, and how to determine which state NASPO Valuepoint contracts your state uses.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Voight. I think that was a pretty in-depth answer. We have a question from Richard Pennington. Jonathan, I believe this is directed more towards you. Have there been challenges to EPEAT recruitments or supplier certification in the context of bid protest? And what role did GEC play in that issue?
That actually may be a better question for Andy. I can say for my part that I'm not aware of any protests, and therefore GEC played no role in the factual issues as it relates to that. But maybe Andy has some perspective.
So this is Andy. I haven't seen any protests on those grounds.
Awesome. Okay. And hey, Jonathan, Andy mentioned in his presentation that GEC takes efforts to help out with smaller vendors. Can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's such an important issue for most governments who participate in. Well, first I'll just say that this effort ties in part to a recent update to our criteria. We updated our computer and display criteria and our EPEAT registry just last month. June 28th was actually when we officially sunset the 2009 criteria and moved towards 2018. And as a result, now it reflects a more leadership posture and better addresses things like social and corporate criteria, to one of the questions that went earlier. Now, major brands have been able to place products on the registry, but we wanted to make sure that that we were going to allow micro, small, and medium enterprises. That's kind of how we refer to these small and medium-sized groups. We wanted to ensure that they were also able to make the jump to our new criteria. So to that specific question, GEC currently has a program specifically designed to assist these MSMEs. Any MSME, micro, small, medium enterprise that's vying to be on the registry, but they might need, say, additional time to gather documentation or complete steps that are part of the process. We list them, and you can go on the GEC EPEAT registry website now and see this. We list them as transitioning MSMEs, and I'm sure you heard my air quotes that I made while I said that. So they are listed as such, and what that does is it gives purchasers who want to work with these small and medium-sized manufacturers a better understanding of which manufacturers are vying to offer them products, and also it establishes an understood timeline that it's going to happen within the next 6 months. So we kind of serve as a communication channel between purchasers who are interested in knowing whether or not there's a contingent of small and mediums, and the small and medium businesses or manufacturers themselves, so that everybody understands where they are in the process. So thank you for that question, and it's something that we think is really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's the best way for brands and manufacturers to learn about the RFP process and submit bids? I'll open that up for all three of our panelists.
So this is Andy, and I'll start with that. So I can't necessarily speak to the NASPO Valuepoint level or to other states, but I do know that for Minnesota, go into our central procurement page, the Office of State Procurement website. We do have a solicitation announcements page that we set up there, and vendors can check that to check in and see what kind of opportunities are available there. We do also encourage companies that would be interested in doing business with the state of Minnesota to register in our supplier portal, which is our ERP system and the supplier facing side of it. There are several other states that have kind of similar centralized web pages for their central procurement office. So that's the best answer I can give for that on behalf of Minnesota.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Kevin. This is Voight Shealy of NASPO Valuepoint again. I would recommend that you start with our website, which is www.naspovaluepoint.org. The primary toolbar at the top has several columns that selections that would be useful for you. The primary one, we have one of the selections is Supplier Portal. There's a variety of information, a wealth of information there about how NASPO Valuepoint works, benefits of being a NASPO Valuepoint contractor, answers many frequently asked questions, and you can view active solicitations there. So start with our website. If you have any additional questions, please email info at naspovaluepoint.org.
Yes. Thank you, Voight. And again, you can also email me at kminer@naspo.org, and I can help to point you in the right direction if I don't already have the answer myself. We have time for one more question, so I'll shoot this broad one out to everybody. I've got about 2 minutes left. But what are the top 5 benefits for organizations to buy EPEAT certified PCs?
Sorry, I was on mute. What are the top 5 benefits? I
Yeah,
would say,
or just even the top 3.
Sure. Well, first off, the ease of the ability to apply EPEAT within the procurement process, because it's something that will be quite easy to apply. But to the meat of the question, it really comes down to the fact that you're taking a commodity that is purchased in incredible volume, and through use of EPEAT, reducing and mitigating environmental and social impacts in a way that you probably couldn't for almost any other commodity. I'd say that another benefit is that it's being done in a credible way, so that when you utilize the EPEAT ecolabel, you know that those benefits are real. And as if just to kind of walk through the presentation a little bit, because of certain reporting tools like the EPEAT calculator, you're able to demonstrate the wisdom of that decision. And so I think that ease of implementation, the fact that you're really making a difference in the areas that matter most, the fact that you can trust the results that are going to come from use of EPEAT, and your ability to demonstrate it to the world that you made this decision and it made a difference, I think I gave you 4 there. I bet you I'd come up with a 5th, but that one felt right, that little pitch.
Excellent. Well, that puts us right at our hour. We want to, first of all, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. We couldn't have a webinar if we don't have people watching. But I'd also really like to thank Jonathan, Voight, and Andy for presenting, taking time out of their day to impart on us some wisdom and education. So again, that email at the bottom there, that's highlighted, the kminer@naspo.org. If you email me, I am happy to point you in the direction you want to go or get you connected with these guys depending on your questions. So with that being said, again, I really appreciate everybody. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you on another one soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.